the British Columbia Court of Appeal has ordered a new trial for the former leader of a religious sect who was acquitted of taking a 15-year-old girl across the U.S. border for a sexual purpose. The Crown appealed the verdict in the case of James Ole, the former leader of a fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints community in Bountiful, BC, which practices polygamy. A BC Supreme Court judge acquitted Mr. Ole last year because he was not convinced Mr. Ole did anything within Canada's borders to arrange the girl's transfer to the United States to marry a member of the sect. There was no evidence confirming Mr. Ole's location when he received a phone call from church president Warren Jeffs in 2004 asking him to bring the girl to the United States. And no record of either Mr. Ole or the teenager crossing the border. But Special Prosecutor Peter Wilson told the appeal court that proof of wrongdoing inside Canada was not necessary for a conviction. The law against removing children for a sexual purpose is designed to protect youth who are taken to another country and subjected to an offense that would be a crime under Canadian law. He argued, and it therefore applies to Mr. Ole's alleged actions in the United States. The appeal court agreed and in a written decision released on Tuesday said the trial judge erred. It cannot be said that it would offend international comity for the Canadian criminal law to redress the harm of removing an ordinarily resident child from Canada for the purpose of activity that would be an offence in Canada, wrote Justice Mary Saunders on behalf of a three-judge panel. Canada has a compelling interest in protecting this vulnerable subset of the public, even if the accused was not on Canadian soil when the child was removed. However, Justice Saunders wrote the law does require evidence that the child was in Canada when the accused arranged to have her removed. The trial judge didn't express a conclusion as to the girl's whereabouts when Mr. Ole allegedly made the arrangements. But he did note the fact that she was ordinarily resident in Canada does not prove she was in Canada at the time. Justice Saunders wrote that there was circumstantial evidence that might have shed light on the girl's location, but the trial judge didn't explore it. For that reason, she concluded that the appeal court could not simply substitute a guilty verdict for Mr. Ole's acquittal and instead must order a new trial. Mr. Ole did not have a lawyer at either the trial or the appeal hearing, so the court appointed an impartial advisor to assist the court and provide balance. The 54-year-old was excommunicated from the church around 2012 and now lives in Alberta. He was convicted of polygamy in a separate case and sentenced in June to 3 months house arrest, plus community service and probation, for having 5 wives. Also on Tuesday, the court denied an appeal from Gail Blackmore, also known as Emily, who was convicted of taking a 13-year-old girl across the border to marry a member of the sect. Her husband, Brandon Blackmore, was also convicted of the crime. Ms. Blackmore's lawyer argued her husband likely didn't tell her the reason for the rushed trip to the United States with the teenage girl, as wives are expected to obey husbands without questioning the church. The lawyer argued the judge determined Ms. Blackmore helped her husband move the girl based on an incorrect interpretation of circumstantial evidence. But the appeal court dismissed the appeal, saying the judge's conclusion was reasonable. The trip was hurried, that is, taken on short notice, and it was not insignificant in distance traveled or duration. These features invite the reasonable inference of an explanatory conversation between husband and wife, Justice Saunders wrote. She added that it's not an answer to the charge for Ms. Blackmore to say anything I did because I was obedient.